So the next slide starts with Andrew McGahan, who is the director of JSSA. And Andrew?
Thank you. I'm Andrew McGahan. I am the clinical director at the Northern Virginia office of JSSA, the Jewish Social Service Agency. I see some familiar faces. I have been here probably for about the last 5 years, off and on. We come every year to work with the 5th graders in reference to the bullying dynamic itself. We're very active in the Jewish community. We're at all the synagogues doing programming around this. Wednesday night, we're at Bethel. So today, I'm going to try and cover a couple of different things. I'm more than happy to take questions as we go or at the end. As Stephen has noted, when incidents do happen, the most primary thing that you're obviously going to be looking at is your change in the child's behavior. You guys know your kids obviously the best, and so obviously when you are seeing things that are different, it's when you start asking questions, whether it be to your child, to the school, and I will agree 100% with Stephen in terms of if there is an incident, where you come in and starting to work with the school is at where it started at the lowest levels and working yourself up that chain of command. Again, is understanding the situation. When we talk about bullying, and I'm going to cover bits and pieces around bullying, the topic is huge. Generally speaking, the presentation we do with parents is about 2 hours long. Fairfax County has been very aggressive themselves in trying to change what their policies are around bullying. They've become very much more concrete, which is good. They went through a process over the last 2 years or so. I was involved in that in a couple of different areas. The Fairfax County Partnership for Youth, which is a nonprofit organization that works with Fairfax County Public Schools. They too have put together a big program on how to address bullying, whether it be within the context of a school, of a community center, or some other entity, a sports team. And actually they have a big launch coming, I think it's Tuesday night. That being that the bullying dynamic has taken, obviously front page notice with the deaths, the suicides, and some of the other tragic things that happen in relation to it, not to mention the long-term effects that go along with it. Understanding the situation, whether it be a conflict, whether it be discrimination, whether it be bullying, it's making sure that you understand exactly what happened. I encourage parents, I encourage teachers and staff all the time to document, to write things down, to hold on to emails that have been sent to you, to your child. All of these things will be used by the school or by the entity to define what type of interaction it was, whether or not it was bullying. The schools have become very specific in how they categorize it, and documentation is part of that process. So making sure that you're keeping track of the specific information, where it happened, when it happened, who was involved. Obviously, the understanding of resources, knowing your school teachers, knowing the guidance counselors, the school social workers, the school nurse, the librarian. The more people you know, the more you're involved with the school, the more resources you have. And then obviously involving outside resources when necessary, whether it be the JCRC, PJLL, JSSA, personal therapists, whatever the case may be, other counselors, knowing who your resources are and making sure that you have the ability to tap into that as well. The other aspect, and this comes up a lot, whether it be I'm working with a school staff or a parent community, is the ability to communicate positively and collaborate with the school. What we have seen a lot is that parents, something has happened, the call goes into the school, it's a very aggressive call, something's happening to my child. Of course, we're worried, we're upset. In doing so, the school then automatically takes a very defensive stance, and then the communication becomes harder and harder and harder. I would encourage always trying to go about that first phone call, that first interaction, in one of collaboration, that you're going to be working on this together to address the issue. We know when our kids, or if we've been accused of something, our reaction is going to be one of defensiveness. So it's protecting your child in the sense that you're going in and we're going to go about this collaboratively. And then also knowing when the child will need additional supports, whether it be social skills, some other sports programming, counseling, a variety of other resources out there. So in the context of discrimination, unfortunately, we do live in a society where it does still exist. And we see it a lot, and I see it a lot, particularly with some of the children I work with, in more of the subtle discrimination, not that overt, in your face, subtle comments, subtle sarcasm, things said that, you know, doing that, oh, wow, that was kind of a Jewish thing to do, or you're being kind of Jewish on that. Those kinds of comments, and kids will miss it often, and they don't realize that they're actually being discriminated against at first. So these things can be obviously a one-time incident or ongoing. If they're ongoing, they will start to fall more into that category of bullying. We are working right now with a school, whereas there were comments made, it wasn't in reference to Jewish, but there were subtle comments being made to a particular child about their faith, of a different faith, Islam. And it had become, the family actually started tracking it and keeping a little log at home as to all the little comments that were made. And there were about 15 comments made over the course of a month or so. And these are just things said offhandedly, kind of backhanded comments, but they add up, obviously, and they're going to have an effect on the child, their self-esteem, and their self-identity. Discrimination can be verbal, physical, can be graffiti, can be obviously very subtle, and it can be also based in cyber and technology. Cyberbullying has probably become, in a lot of ways, the most preferred manner, particularly with the high school students in particular, with their access to Facebook, Instagram, all the other stuff out there. How many of you have high school students? How many of those high school students are on the computer? Right. Just saying. Do you know how much time a high school student should be on the computer? Take a guess. Give me a guess. Per day. What's healthy? 2 to 3 hours. Average time most high schoolers are actually on computers. 7 hours. So, for all you parents of high school students, it's something actually, and that plays out well also in elementary school, the same notion, and actually kids in elementary school really should be limited to their access to screen time and computer time. How many have elementary school age kids? Okay. The best amount of time for an elementary school age child is about an hour to an hour and a half. Most elementary school kids are on the computer about how long? About 3 to 4 hours a day. Yep. So it's something to be aware of. The reason technology is great, I'm not going to argue it. I have a PS3. I bought a new video game yesterday. I get it. That being said, if we're not watching how much our kids are experiencing these things, the influence that the video games, that the different shows, that the different online interactions going on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So in understanding discrimination itself, there can be genuine curiosity, but then there can also be genuine discrimination. So there's often inquisitiveness. I was raised actually myself very strict Catholic, and did not have a very good understanding of the Jewish culture until I got into college and met more people of the Jewish faith. Genuine questions can be asked by other students versus something that is vindictive, a comment or a question meant to bring about embarrassment, shame, or humiliation, or an unwanted attention, which is another thing. Often kids who are very private, whether they be Christian, Jewish, Islam, are private about their identity and their religious faith, and they don't necessarily want that blasted out there. So making comments to other people in front of kids about someone's religious background can also be seen as discrimination if one is trying to safeguard themselves and keep those things private. Sometimes it's very important, though. I've worked with a lot of kids that feel, and we can talk a little bit about this, particularly around boys and how boys interact, that kids feel that there are jokes made at times and they don't take offense to it. Us men have a tendency that when we bond, we like to tease and make fun of one another. So the interaction of the child and the perception of the child will play a role into how they're identifying whether or not they're being hassled, harassed, shamed. But often people are just asking genuine questions about one's background, one's faith, to gain better understanding. And it's very important to understand and differentiate between the two. So when we talk about bullying, bullying now has a very, very specific definition. Most of the schools in Virginia, Fairfax County, Arlington County, Alexandria City have shifted to the U.S. Department of Education's definition of bullying, which means that it has to be ongoing, It has to be continuous, and this again goes back to why you want to document what is happening. I tell teachers all the time to document what's happening. I tell school administrative staff to document what's happening. And it works both ways. If a parent calls in and says, my child is being bullied, and the teacher's been aware of a conflict and has written down what's going on, and maybe this conflict has only happened once or twice, the response from the school can be, well, it's not really a bullying dynamic. There is a serious conflict, but it's not bullying. And the schools are going to be very specific now into how they categorize it in terms of whether or not it's considered bullying. It has to be intentional, and that intent is that there is an intent to cause harm. It's being done on purpose. We want somebody to feel bad. We want someone to feel humiliated, shamed, embarrassed in front of a group. So there has to be that intent behind it. And then the last thing would be that there has to be an obvious sign of an imbalance of power. Power is defined in many different areas. The kids are very good at pointing out whether it be social power and popularity. It can be cyber power, and one has access to computers and has access to technology. Other kids don't. We often equate financial status to power. And then, of course, there's the classic, physical power, and we're pushing people down. Yes, ma'am?
But if it's peer-peer, where there's no power imbalance, it's not bullying?
There will probably be a power. No, there will probably be a power imbalance if it's going to be defined within the context of bullying. So, for example, if you have two peers, the kids are the same age, same grade, same class, whatever, one could be popularity, and one kid has a lot more popularity than the other, and that power has been used to do an ongoing and intentional, we're getting our henchmen, our hench people is what I've been told by the kids. I have to be more politically correct. The girls didn't like henchmen, so hench people, their gang, their posse is the one that they like to use too.
The other type of minions.
The other type of minions, there you go. But yes, there's always, when it's going to be defined within the context of bullying, the school will be able, the counselor, you as a parent, even the child will be able to identify where there's been that imbalance in power, okay? A conflict is usually argument, single, maybe a couple times. It's not something that's ongoing. You will definitely have the aspect that will be missing is that imbalance of power. And power does not also, it can also be included within the context of intelligence. I have worked with kids, and not just intelligence, but the manner of quick thinking. And I have worked with kids who are literally, 4'11", they're in 5th grade, they're tiny, and they've been accused of being a bullier. And they are very smart, and they know how to find the weakness of another child. And I worked with a boy who was in 6th grade, played football, but he was complaining to his parents about being bullied, and the dad didn't want to believe him. You're a big guy, who was going to pick on you? And it happened to be one of the smallest kids in the school, but had gotten some information about him, was very smart at how he's putting that information out there, what he was saying to the boy, where he was saying it in front of others in order to get a reaction. And the child was totally being bullied. So size is not the only thing, obviously. Also, peer conflicts can be unintentional. And a comment can be made about something, whether it be about the Jewish faith, the Catholic faith, the Muslim faith. It can be a question. It can be something said not meant to cause harm, and someone takes offense to it, which is fine. And it's working through that conflict and understanding and differentiating between the concept of bullying and the concept of a peer conflict. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. If it is that, and if it's cyber related and you're going to involve the police, you are going to need a record. And actually with cyberbullying, there is a law. I don't have the law in this slide, in this PowerPoint presentation, but Fairfax County uses a law that you're not allowed to use computers or technology to purposely harass, stalk, blah, 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 blah. It comes with up to 12 months in jail and a $2,500 fine, to which the parents of the child of the aggressor is actually the one who will be held accountable in terms of the financial status. Kids are rarely sent to jail, just so you know, but but they are put on probation, supervised, unsupervised. There's community service requirements. There's a variety of things. And when addressing cyberbullying, often the schools have a hard time in tracking it. And often parents feel as if we do need to bring the police in. I would encourage, if your child has ever been a victim of it, everyone knows how to do a snapshot of the computer screen, I hope. You hit your print screen, you cut and paste it, you print it. Keep copies of everything because it will be needed if you're actually going to prove that your child is being bullied in the school and or the authorities need to get involved.
And Andrew, I'd also like to add from a JCRC perspective, we have dealt with incidents where there's been electronic correspondence outside the schools, but it's involving classmates within the school, and the schools still have been willing to get involved and engaged because they do understand that that's impacting their school environment. So just because it's happening off campus doesn't mean that the schools don't want to get involved to address that.
Agreed. And when we go into schools and do programs with the school staff, the administration, and the teachers, most of the teachers and the staff will acknowledge that we will almost always take an active role in dealing with it because the context of that dynamic are going to play out in our school hallways. So even if it happens at home in the neighborhood and it's a repetitive thing, and letting the school know that this is going on and getting them, chances are it's happening at school as well. Okay? It happens within the context of the schools. It happens obviously where there are not adults, where there's not the adult supervision, the bathrooms, the playgrounds, the libraries where the lines of sight are very hard. The school bus, has become a very popular place, so to speak, in terms of harassment, and the bus stop. So here I have listed out, generally speaking, the different types of bullying that we discuss. The kids always like you'll notice that emotional is not on there, and the kids will always say emotional bullying. I do not include that because all bullying is emotional. All bullying has an emotional content to it. So it doesn't matter if you're being excluded. It doesn't matter if someone is attacking your race, or if there's some sort of sexual harassment, which is categorized under the bullying laws and policies within Fairfax County Public Schools for sure. That there's going to be an emotional content to it, and there's going to be feelings hurt and pain and suffering. So I don't usually put that word up there anymore. As I've noted, particularly with the high schoolers, the cyberbullying has become the big venue for this. I don't know how many of you, a lot of you raised your hands with high schoolers. How many of you guys have heard the story about Amanda Todd? Nobody? Couple? All right, I'm surprised because the kids are talking about it a lot. You can search it on YouTube. It is a very difficult video to watch. This is a young lady who, as a freshman in high school, made one mistake where she flashed another bunch of kids on the other end of a cyber interaction going on. The kids took a snapshot of it and began disseminating it. She made one mistake. They followed her from school to school to school to the point that she had to pack up, move to a different city, still found her online. And this is the frustration with the cyberbullying aspect of things. There's anonymity, and you can track people down everywhere. She made this incredible video about her experience of being the victim of bullying. And I'm going to date myself. And XS has a video, which was actually a playoff of a Bob Dylan video, where they just flip cards throughout the concept of the video, right, and it tells the story. So she does the same thing. She doesn't say a word. There's music playing in the background, but she flips cards to tell her story. And it's a very hard story to watch, and she ends up suffering from cutting and depression and suicide attempt. She put this video out a year ago. Nothing really happened with it. It went viral about a month ago because she actually succeeded in committing suicide. It did not stop, and it went on, and this had been going on for years. So this is the cyber aspect of things. The kids have a really hard time getting away from it. When I work with kids, particularly those who are victims of it, and they're on Facebook and Instagram and some of these other things, I know it's impossible for them to comprehend, but I actually have them shut down their Facebook accounts for a period of time, shut down Instagram, shut down these other things, because this is how the kids find access to them. In terms of educating your child, make sure that they have an understanding of how you feel about the concept of bullying and discrimination. Jewish kids discriminate too. They're the victims of, and they do it. We all do. We're all following that. Understanding and having a discussion with your child of what it means to be a minority. I come from a family background where I was adopted. I was adopted into a white family. I went to a predominantly white school. As a matter of fact, my first experience was in the Catholic school where there were 2 African-American students, myself and my sister. I had no idea what it was like or what the concept was to be a minority, and kind of thrown into it full kit and caboodle. It was a conversation my parents never had with me. And I encourage you, Judaism is often, as we know, seen as an ethnicity, it's seen as its own culture subset, and having a discussion with your kids as to what it means to be a minority, to be different from others, is probably one of the most important conversations that you can have with your kids so they have an understanding of what it means to be looked at differently. This goes back to some of the things that Stephen was saying in terms of the seeking the support, reporting the incident, document the incident, document, even if it's discrimination, document. The school needs to know about it, even if it's not an ongoing thing. Make sure you have the information as to who was involved, what happened. Again, going back to being the aggressive versus assertive. Being aggressive will get you nowhere in the school system. They will shut you down. They will shut you out. As a parent, you have the right to know what's happening to your child. When another child has been tagged as a bullier and there is consequences being handed out, when there is a policy being put into place, you do not have the right to know what is going on with that other child. And I know it's very frustrating. I always tell parents, if the behavior stops, you know that the school is doing their job. But they are not going to tell you, nor do you have the right to know that information. It's private information. And then again, having the safety plan. You don't necessarily have the right to insist upon it. He is the coach. He's going to run the team the way he sees fit. As a parent, I would encourage you to be speaking with the coach and letting him know as to what you would hope would come out of that this is really a serious insult. And I would really hope that you would speak to this child specifically in addition to doing something. You can't make it. Was it at is it a youth league or is it a school base? Yeah, and that's the difference. If it was a school base, I would say you'd need to inform the school, because the school then has to play a role in terms of ensuring that if it's a youth league, and the youth leagues are very different. In addition to, each sport is managed very differently. I don't know how many of you all have kids who play football. Football coaches are very different from basketball coaches, from baseball coaches. Football coaches are very different in general. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of screaming. They actually come across as bullies themselves. It's kind of the culture of the sport. So that's another nuance in terms of working within the context of the youth sports leagues.
And Angela, if I could again amplify, so how we've addressed that a little bit at JCRC
Sure.
as well. It may have been beneficial for the coach to address specifically the person, but what we try to ask for at JCRC when incidents happen and parents are in agreement is that we want to make it a teachable moment. We actually think that the idea of addressing the environment in the school is a better approach to address not just what happened there, but to create a better ongoing climate. ADL handles these issues nationwide as well. They created a program called World of Difference that specifically is doing that. That is taking the students and teaching them to be mediators, because what we don't want is to see all the people around bearing silent witness. The goal is to have the other students able to and understanding their role in stopping the bullying.
Well, on that fact, the fact that in your situation that the other kids went after the aggressor in that situation, it's really what we want to play out. When I go into schools, we work with all the kids, but we talk a lot about the power of the witness. 85% of kids are neither bullied nor bullies themselves. Most kids are witnesses to this. I never use the word bystander, even though it's used all the time. Bystander and shows that, kind of alludes to standing by, whereas witnesses, we talk with the kids on reporting it and being an active participant, that you have power. Sure. That goes right back to why we're here today in terms of talking to your children about the Jewish identity and building that identity within. Yes. Safety plan would be sitting down with your kids and talking to them. If you see something happen, who would you feel safe talking to let know that that's happened? Would it be us? Do you have a favorite teacher at school? Do you like the school counselor? Do you like the school nurse? If you're a victim, if you feel as if you've been victimized in some way, what's our plan? Who are you going to tell first? Is it going to be school? Are you going to come home? Are you going to talk to me? Then I will email or contact the school. It's having a couple of set steps, usually up to 3, as to if there's an incident going on, how you're expecting your child to manage that scenario, and then your role in that as well. These next couple of slides are all in your packet. I want to make sure Avi has enough time, and I'll take more questions at the end around the topic of bullying and discrimination. So we do cover briefly in the packet what to do, the basics, is if you think your child's being bullied, what not to do. There are a lot of do nots, okay? I know as boys, I was always told to fight back physically. Boys are still told it to this day. I don't condone it. Sometimes it actually will end the interaction, but it's just not necessarily going to be the right way to go about it, particularly because on Fairfax County school property, if you're caught in a physical altercation, everybody is getting in trouble, and everyone's being suspended. Now, the aggressor may get more time, more serious consequences, but if your child's physically fighting, they're going to get suspended as well. What to do if you think your child may be bullying others, and if there's targets, there are aggressors, so working with the school with that. And then what to do if your child witnesses bullying. So all these things are laid out in the PowerPoint, and at this point, I turn it over to Mr. Avi.
Thank you.